In Business News.
I'm very honored to have with me today Mr. Alex Robertson, Chivas Regal brand ambassador, and Mr. Kevin Balmforth, the master blender, one master blender of Chivas Regal. So, Alex, you are well known around the world for your in-depth knowledge and passion for whiskey. When did you first get involved with the whiskey industry? Because you have passed in media.
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity, Demetrius. Yes, I've got the best job in the world, travelling the globe to talk about Chivas Regal. I've been doing that role for about 10 years now, and in that time I've visited more than 50 countries. And yes, I was a journalist prior to that with the BBC and other media in Scotland. But Scotch whisky, Chivas Regal, is part of your identity, it's part of your culture. And I remember walking into a local bar and it had more than 500 whiskies in the wall. And I started to explore those whiskies, visiting distilleries, tasting the whiskies themselves, meeting people within the industry. So I indulged my passion, and I also loved travel. And I thought, I want to be part of this industry. And I thought there's no better way to be part of it than joining Chivas Brothers and representing Chivas Regal. And here I am, 10 years later, living the dream.
It was a challenge for you, I suppose. You have joined the Chivas family and expert blending team, taking on the task of continuing to reinforce the legacy of excellence at Chivas Brothers. Tell us, Kevin, a few words about your role and the experience so far.
Yeah, thank you. And I was actually extremely lucky. If I just say what Alex said, he has the best job in the world. He's wrong. I have the best job in the world. I joined Chivas Brothers quite soon after leaving university in 1999, so 18 years now, and I joined the blending department straight away. So I've been working in blending, and I've never left the blending department. Blending is my life. I worked in the blending department throughout my whole career. It was actually Colin Scott that interviewed me back in 1999, and since then I didn't realise that at the time how lucky I was to get straight into the blending department. And now I look back that I have so much passion for Scotch whisky and for Chivas Regal. I realised just how lucky that opportunity that was.
Which job you think is more difficult, to be the brand ambassador or the master blender?
Yeah, well, I think equal measures. I think, you know, I have the great opportunity to talk about Kevin's work, and I think that's the beauty of it. Kevin really is the man behind Chivas Regal and Regal Altus that brings us to Cyprus.
Yeah, and I think I get the best of both worlds. I get to travel with Alex, and we get to do these amazing, travel the world, and we get to hear what everyone says about these amazing whiskies that I've had the opportunity to create.
So, what is the secret behind the quality and great taste that makes Chivas Whiskey such a prestigious brand?
It's a great question. I have the honour of also looking after the company archives and our history, and we have a history that goes back to 1801, more than 200 years, and the Chivas brothers, James and John, were pioneers in blending smooth, delicate grain whiskies with much more distinctive malt whiskies to create a house style that was rich, that was floral, that was fruity, and it's that tradition that Kevin safeguards today. The first Chivas Regal was launched in 1909 as the world's first luxury whisky, and was then continued with a 12-year-old in 1938. We built on that success year on year, decade after decade, generation after generation, as we will find with Altus. And it's an honour to be part of Chivas Brothers, first of all representing a workforce of 1,600 people in Scotland and England, and thousands more indirectly involved in the whisky industry, so that's an absolute honour. But also an honour to be involved with Chivas Regal, because Chivas Regal stands for something. We are creators de convivialité. Chivas Regal stands for generosity, and we sponsor the venture, which is an annual $1 million fund for social entrepreneurs. So all in all, it's just wonderful. As you can tell, we're incredibly passionate about it.
Chivas is very rich, has a very rich history.
Yes, I like to encapsulate and call it the blending legacy we have. And it comes in two parts. Over the last 100 years, we've developed and nurtured this amazing inventory that we have that has a myriad of flavours. going over, starting from a few casks in a cellar in Aberdeen to we have in excess of 6 million casks now in our inventory. And I honestly believe we've never been in a better place. The inventory has never been, and it has such good quality whiskies and the wood management system to produce incredible whiskies, new whiskies such as Altus.
And I think we have a classic worth pointing out. We have a Speyside influenced style, the most important whiskey producing region in Scotland, floral fruity whiskies, and at the heart of our whiskies, every whiskey you try in the Chivas Regal range is Strathyla, a classic Speyside single malt, built in 1786, the oldest operating distillery in the Highlands. You must come and visit us, Demetrius.
I would be very glad.
Yeah.
And the second part is the skills, because we're still a very traditional blending department. It was quite hands-on. We're using traditional techniques that we're using 100 years ago with the first master blender. So it's over the last 100 years we've passed on these skills, the experience from generation to generation, and we're still using that today.
And you see that we go from the launch of 25-year-old in New York in 1909 to today, where we're available in 150 countries around the world.
You are visiting maybe the most beautiful island of the Eastern Mediterranean, Cyprus, on the occasion of the Chivas Regal Ultis launch party. What is it that makes Chivas Regal Ultis such a unique whiskey?
Well, first of all, a great pleasure to be in Cyprus. Despite visiting more than 50 countries, this is my first time here, and it's a stunning island, and we've had such a warm reception and an incredible response to Chivas Regal Altus. What makes it special is it's the first blended malt whiskey from the house of Chivas Regal. It's the essence of Chivas Regal, and Kevin will tell you more. He mentioned the number of casks we have maturing in Scotland. Fewer than 1% of our casks are chosen to go into Chivas Regal Altus. I'm going to hand it over to the master himself to tell you about.
Of course.
Well, we had this amazing concept to create Chivas Altus, and that was to capture the essence of Chivas Regal. So just put that in perspective, we talk about Scotland, the most amazing whiskey producing country in the world. And then if you focus into Scotland, to Speyside, in this prolific whiskey making region within Scotland, and then you have Chivas Regal, with the most famous blended whiskey from Speyside. So we then went even further to find the heart and capture the real essence of Chivas Regal. And to do that, we identified five key malts within Chivas Regal. So the first one, Tullamore. If you're ever travelling towards Speyside, there's no border, there's no signpost to tell you when you're entering Speyside. But when you see Tullamore, because it's right on the edge of Speyside, when you see Tullamore, that you're in Speyside. It's characterised by really amazing citrus fruity notes, which you'll see when we come to taste Altus. The second malt, Longmorn, a little bit further into Speyside, it has a creamy toffee notes it brings to the blend.
It's a beauty.
And then right in the centre of space we've got Strathyla, the heart and home of Chivas Regal. It's the heart and home of the entire Chivas Regal range, and this is no exception for Altus. Again, it's the centre pillar for Altus. And then Alt Labania, it's a distillery many people might not know about, but it's always been important to Chivas Regal, and it adds lovely spicy malty aromas to the blend. And then a very remote distillery up near the Highlands, one of the remotest places in Speyside is Brayval. It adds incredible honey, floral, heathery notes.
And these five whiskies are paying tribute to 5 master blenders that we've had in 100 years.
That would be my next
question. Over 100
yes.
years, in Chivas Brothers. And think of a role that's only had 5 people performing it in over a century. Think of that expertise, and starting with Charles Howard back in 1909, going through to Charles Julian, Alan Bailey, Jimmy Lang, and then of course the master blender, current custodian master blender Colin Scott, who joined the industry the year I was born in 1973.
So we spent a lot of time looking through our entire inventory, got this huge inventory, but spent a lot of time and finding the perfect combinations of these 5 malts, some of the best examples of those 5 malts, and bring them together to create Altus.
And when people have tasted it here in Cyprus at the events that we've hosted, they see exactly that flow of flavour. So you go from citrus through to creamy to fruity into the spicy and finally the floral. If it makes you want to try it.
So I would like to give us some advice and a few tips on how to recognize a good quality whiskey.
Again, another great question. I think the starting point to recognise a good quality whiskey, if it says Chivas Regal on the front, you know you're winning. But yes, the best tool, of course, is the nose for assessing whiskey. And you know, there's no right or wrong way to taste whiskey. Whiskey can be enjoyed neat, it can be enjoyed on the rocks, it can be enjoyed as part of a cocktail. But you can experience a multitude of aromas if you add a little bit of water and try it in the nose, and all of those will come to life. Or you think of a garden on a dry day, nothing comes to life. Think of it after rainfall, and there's a multitude of aromas. So try that and then try it in the palate. But we've got the expert here.
What I always tell people when you drink, obviously it's the flavour that's what you're looking for. Like you say, there's no best way to drink whiskey. It's what it's your personal preference. So it's always worthwhile adding a little bit, trying it neat first, adding a little bit of water, and finding out the best way you enjoy whiskey. If that's with ice or water. Myself, I always add half as much water again. So if I have 50 mils of whiskey, I would add 25 mils of water, and that brings it down to about 30%, which I find a very comfortable way to drink whiskey, and you can appreciate the flavours easier.
Because whiskey is a complicated drink, have many flavors inside.
Yes, there's lots and lots of layers to Chivas Regal. You know, if you try Chivas Regal 18, there's more than 20 of Scotland's rarest malt whiskies in there. Multi-layered here, we have the 5 contributing beautifully to the flavour. But at the same time, you shouldn't let that put you off, because whiskey is absolutely accessible, and the first thing you want to look for is the sweetness. It often comes from the cask, the oak in which we mature the whiskey. You want to look for the fruity notes that are first born in the distillery, and then look for floral, and just enjoy the experience.
Yeah, I always find a lot of people think Scotch whisky is a very robust, a very strong drink, but it's actually very complex, and it's all in balance, and it's easily upset. It's a very delicate drink. So you have to be careful when you're adding water. You don't add too much, especially when you go to higher ages, when you get to your 18s, your 25-year-olds. You maybe want to add a bit less water, because it could upset the balance, because whiskey is a very delicate, it's easily bruised, it's easily damaged.
So I'm very honored to have you with me. Was a very nice opportunity to meet you, and maybe we finish our small interview by tasting Chivas Ultis that just arrived in Cyprus.
Oh, I thought you would never ask, Demetrius.
Let's do it. So lovely, thank you.
Thank you very much.
For you.
Oh, stunning.
Yeah.
It's good to give it a swirl to get the flavours out.
Have to copy exactly the moves
Yeah.
I have to make so as to have the...
You can just hold it next to your nose as Kevin's doing, and you just get those aromas starting to open.
You have to get the nose right in there.
And again, you think of that slight citrus note that should come first from the Tormore.
And the creamy toffee notes from the Longmont, and then everything's brought together with Strathyla. You know, the orchard fruits, the ripe pears, apples, those amazing malty, that signature Speyside character that is Chivas Regal.
Excellent.
And this will be a permanent addition to the Chivas Regal range, so it's going to stay with us. So how do you say here, Yamas? Yeah,
Yamas.
Yeah, yes.
Yamas.
Yamas. Yeah.
Amazing.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Sandra.
Cheers.